history. I've always been a historian.
Right.
And so, yeah,
That's awesome. I mean, it's true. I mean, you want to stay passionate. I mean, the movement keeps going. I mean, when
mhm.
like with the murders of like Eric Garner, like all the way up to like there's been movement. It just hasn't been televised. It still keeps going. When Ferguson happened, like even though it wasn't on the news anymore, it still was going on. But some people think it was over.
Yeah, and
Really,
it's not. It's
it's
not
not.
over,
I
right?
mean, the work is not done.
And to to really like understand that, look at what's happening with voting. Like, yes, people can vote, but has the push for equality around voting? No, that has not ended, right?
Right.
So, to think that the civil rights movement is somehow over, no, it's not.
No, no. But then now with a question that that I've heard sometimes is, well, I've observed, there are all these because there's so many intricacies and so many fights in the bigger movement. When you have young people that are so energized and they want that big sweeping change, and you see these little victories like like the Eric Garner law finally being passed, the Minneapolis banning chokeholds, like how do you kind of speak to students like this is part of the movement? I know you want a big sweeping change, but like this is part of the change. It comes in waves. Or how do you address it to students? Or
I mean, just that way. And having them understand that, like, the difference between now,
Mhm.
right, and what was happening in let's say the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, is that now we're desegregated. Then it was segregated. And so, you have people who are sort of compressed together, and everybody is looking at the issue, and everybody is sort of coalesced around that particular issue and fighting that particular fight. Well, when desegregation happened, it also had the effect of dispersing our issues. And so, you know, you cannot think about it, well, that happened in Minneapolis and it doesn't have any. No, it may have happened in Minneapolis, but it still has an effect on what happens in Texas, what happens in California, because trust me, all of these agencies are looking at all of these things, all of these changes that are happening. And it may not happen today or tomorrow, but change is going to come on the heels of the Eric Garner law, on the heels of banning chokeholds. Like, you will start to see these sort of sweeping changes that will happen. And so, unfortunately, right, there is this thing where you have to be patient, and people don't want to be patient. And I understand
Amen. Mhm.
not wanting to be patient. Like, we've been patient for 500 years. How much longer are we gonna be patient?
Right. Definitely. So no, that's totally understand. I mean, it's good to know that, and for our students to know, and for everyone else that's really socially active, the change will come if you keep the movement going.
And
So
that's the thing. You have to, it's like creating a diamond, right? The diamond doesn't happen if you press the coal like a one time and you're
right,
like, oh, I got a diamond. No, that's not how it works. The diamond comes by this constant application of pressure, right? And so the change is going to come with the constant application of pressure.
right, right. And when all eyes are on the movement, that's your time to kind of accelerate things and really push. But when the cameras are away, you still are pushing. But
And
it's
and I think
in a way, but
part
that's
of,
how people kind of see things now, because
yeah, and that's what I'm going to say. That's the
clicks and
problem of the 21st century is the camera. Like, the camera is a good thing and the camera is a bad thing, right? It's a good thing in the sense that you know, we got some truths going on about what's happening. No, you really did, with malicious intent, try to do bodily harm to that person, or you really did do X, Y, and Z, right? But then also, because many people are so enamored with the camera, if the camera's no longer on me, then I ain't doing nothing. And so then for me, it's you know, it's disingenuous. You weren't even trying to do anything in the first place except be on the camera.
Right, right. Um, and I guess that brings me to I think, one last point that I wanted to kind of bring up. I know there's always been a struggle with, and there's always been this conflicting issue with like voting. The more disillusioned you become when you feel like your voice is not being heard. And I know a lot of young people feel that way, especially if they don't feel like change is happening quick enough. So how do you get them to not refocus, but like look into the future of how, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of these changes happen at the voting booth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So how do you get them to kind of look at civic engagement in a little more positive light, to kind of, because I'm already hearing some students that are like, I'm not going to vote because it's not worth it.
Look, oh my.
But I know, right?
It's hard. It's hard because my belief, right, is that students, and not just students, but people in general, because I know some adults and I'm looking at them like with my side eye, like, what is wrong with you? Who are just, who have been misinformed, I would say, around voting and what it means to vote. And if you choose not to vote, you know, I sort of feel like, okay, so you decided to drink the Kool-Aid that has been dished out, where, you know, you have this group over here telling you, well, your vote doesn't matter anyway, so don't vote, and, you know, things will just sort of work out in the wash. Well, that's not how it works. Like, it's intentional for you to be persuaded not to vote, because your non-vote is a vote for the other side. And that's what you need to understand. And so I try to, you know, start it early when I have them, especially if they take the course in if they take history in a certain sequence. So if they take 231, 232, and then 281, I always do this. I tell them, I'm not very good at math, but I'm excellent at historical math. And so we do this thing of, I put up this, how did this person become president?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
And so, like, for example, with Lincoln, how did Lincoln become president? And the man wasn't even on the ballot in the South. And when you put it up and you essentially have these three Democratic parties, and Lincoln is a Republican, how did he become president? Well, it's because the Democratic Party was split and people voted a certain way. And so if your party is split and you all can't get your act together, then the person that you don't want to be president is going to become president. Apply that to today, right? If the Democratic Party cannot get their stuff together and people are so disillusioned by what the Democratic Party is doing, and you decide not to vote, your non-vote is a vote for the person you don't want. And then you understanding like how it all works. So no, you are not technically voting for the president of the United States, but you are voting for the electors to pick the person you want. So you need to vote, right? And you also need to participate in local elections, because that's really like where you see this change that you're talking about that's not happening. That's where the change is going to happen. And so it's sort of like this, you know, if you will, a bottom up approach. So if you vote at the state and local level, that has ramifications for what's going to happen at the federal level. But you got to understand, you have to understand how voting works, right?
Right.
And understand, like, there were all of these reforms that were like put into place to really help voters, but we have to do a better job, I would say, of educating people around voting issues and around just the issues in general. Because a lot of times I know people will go into polls and they're just like, oh, I'm gonna check this person, this person, this person, and you don't know anything about that person. You don't know what their platform is. You don't know what issues they're taught. So there more needs to be done in the way of voter education.
Right.
And a lot of times, like, people just tune out. Like, I don't have time for that. The world is going to keep on spinning. If I don't vote, it might keep on spinning, but it might
spin the other way against you.
Out and spin out of control.
No, when I talk to students, I always say, like, I know you want to vote for just the president, like that's the flashy exterior when you buy a house, but nobody ever wants to invest in the bones of the house. That's the local and that's the state level elections. Because when you sell the house, no one sees that stuff. I mean, I just dropped 13 grand on an AC unit. No one's gonna see that.
Yeah, so that's what's holding that house together.
It
right?
is. It's the foundation. So, and I think it's monumentally important, especially with the movement, because it's part of the process. As much as we wanna make these sweeping changes and maybe just break the system altogether, there are still systems that the voting still needs to happen, I guess, and that's.
And like, for me, this is the thing. Yeah, like, everything looks horrible, right? But I tease my students a bit, but then I'm serious. I'm like, you know what? And I'll take my pocket constitution with me to class. You need to invest in a pocket constitution and carry it around with you, because you need to know your rights. And starting with the first 10 amendments,
Yes.
You need to know what they are, you need to know what they mean, and you need to know how to apply them. Oh, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't work for me. This is why it doesn't work, because you don't want to take the time to invest and understand what the Constitution is and how it affects your life.
Oh yeah.
Right. And we can't be passive. From my standpoint, we cannot be passive learners. We have to be active learners, right? I'm never going to take, if somebody walked through my door right now and said, well, da-da-da-da-da-da about X, Y, and I'm like, oh, really? I'm going straight to the library.
Yeah. You're not going to check Twitter. You're not going to check Facebook.
Oh, no. And I tell my students, Google is not your friend. Google can get you in trouble, in fact.
Oh my gosh. I mean, research is important, and you keep coming back to that. And as an amazing history professor, and as a professor at TSU, we need to kind of encourage our students to critically think. And
yes,
I mean, we're preparing them for the future and being the leaders.